Welcome to Two Millennials and Mom, where we bring you engaging conversations and respectful disagreement across the social spectrum.
Injected with the quirks of everyday life.
Curl up as we navigate the complexities of this modern world with all the humor and warmth we can muster.
And the occasional gentle ribbing. We're glad you're here. Happy listening.
Good morning, podcast land. This is Mecca. I'm here with Two Millennials and Mom. Good morning, children.
Good morning, Mother.
How are y'all?
Hanging in there.
I'm good.
Cole looks tired.
Yeah, I don't know, it's been a weird couple of days. It's been like just kind of fading in and out of reality, like crazy weird fever dreams. I don't know what's going on. It's been strange.
I had a dream last night that your dad and I were on an airplane, and I think the airplane crashed like in Cuba or something, and we weren't going to be able to get out. And I woke up just thinking, oh, this is going to be terrible.
Delightful.
Yeah, it was a weird dream. Don't know where it came from.
Yeah. It's weird. I normally remember mine, but I haven't been able to remember any of the ones I've had over the last probably 36 hours. But I can it's those ones where you wake up thinking, I don't know what that was, but it was weird.
Yeah. Hate those kind.
Yeah.
So
maybe I'm the weird one.
For not having weird dreams?
I don't really have dreams at all. I just sleep.
You know, your dad doesn't dream.
Very, very rarely.
Very often.
Yeah.
So
I go through phases where like it'll be like a couple of months of where I have really vivid, intense ones, and then I'll go for a couple of months and not have any that I can remember.
We should figure out what you're ingesting that causes this.
Just say no to drugs, kids.
Yeah.
Well, I've been on a restrictive diet and done pretty much the same thing every day for the last 8 months, so I don't think it's diet.
I don't know. You know, you kind of fell off that diet last weekend. You had sweets and
that is true. I did have
potatoes and chest pie.
It's vegetables. Vegetables are bad for you.
God.
Okay, let's get going.
Okay.
What are we talking about today?
We are talking about voting. Now, we are not talking about voting in any quote-unquote official capacity. This is just kind of our sentiments on voting, because I wanted to get some information from you guys just because I'm curious, but also I wanted to hear some of your opinions on some questions that I had. We are under 2 weeks. I think we're about 10 days out from the election. So it's definitely relevant right now and on everybody's mind. But I wanted to know kind of a little bit more about how you guys vote. What goes into that? How that looks for you? Are you an early voter? Are you a day of voter? Are you a mail-in ballot voter? What does that look like? And how you kind of got there. I was telling Mom earlier this week, Cole, I don't think for the longest time, it's been a couple of years now, so it wasn't like yesterday, but I don't think for a long time I realized that early voting was for everybody. I thought like you had to have a specific reason to go early vote, or there were certain classes of people like, oh, these kinds of people have to go early vote because they can't regular vote, or maybe it was early in the day. Yeah, I mean, kind of.
It did used to have some other restrictions on it.
Well, so I didn't know that I could go and early vote now even. I didn't realize that those restrictions had been changed or whatever that is. And so I just have never not voted on election day. I feel like a whole new world has opened up for me now.
Wow. And I am an early voter because I don't want to go stand in the lines on election day. I want it to all be done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Segue tangent. We were early voting. We were trying to early vote the day that I stepped off the curb and fell, and the little man came over and grabbed my foot and told me that he was a Christian, that he had to help me. As the two women walked right by me with my skirt up over my head and my shoes all over the pavement, and this little man runs over and he grabs my foot and he's moving my toes and he's going, I have to help you. I have to help you. I'm a Christian. I have to help you. And your dad is just thinking, oh, she's fixing to slug him, because I was hurt. And when I hurt, I have a tendency to pass out,
Yep.
that vagus nerve thing. And so he's thinking, oh, she's fixing to hurt him.
Weird question really fast. Why was he touching your feet?
My shoes had fallen off. We'd
This
gone to
sounds
early
like a
vote.
bad,
No.
what is it, walk of shame.
No, it was weird. We'd gone to early vote, and they were having a council meeting instead. So that night, our voting place was closed, and I didn't know it. So I've got my iPad out, and I'm walking, and I'm trying to find the closest next place to go vote. And I'm irritated because I didn't know that it was going to be closed. And, Dad's taking off work, and we're going to do this.
Right.
We've got it going. And I stepped off the curb while I was reading my iPad. So I literally, it was a mess. When I finally landed, my high heels had come off. My iPad was laying over, and of course I'm more worried about it than I am about the rest of me. And this little man just runs to me. And because my shoes had fallen off, he grabbed my foot. And he's trying to and it was my foot that was hurt, that I was thinking, I'm going to die here. Laying in the parking lot with my skirt up over my head and my shoes off, I'm going to die here. And he's just there was obviously a language barrier. And he's just trying to be so sweet and be helpful. But he had my foot, and he's just messing with my toes. He's just moving them like, are they broken? And I'm trying not to pass out.
Right.
And Dad's trying to be ready for when I go to, kill him, this sweet little man, for touching me. And when I'm hurt, I was early voting that day. And we did go early vote, I think, after. We did find a place to go vote after that.
Oh, good. And you got your shoes back and your feet back, and everybody was okay?
Yeah, I'm still mad at the two women who walked by me without even asking.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Their monkey, not their circus.
That's pretty much what was on their face, yes.
Oh, that's funny. So, Mom's a big fan of early voting. Cole, when and how do you vote?
I'm normally a day of voter. I think I did early voting last year just because it kind of fit my schedule earlier, but I'm normally a day of voter, but I normally end up either in the middle of the day when there's no one there, or
Right.
later in the evening right before they close, so that there aren't really lines or anything. It just kind of I normally spend an hour and a half to 2 hours in the parking lot studying hey, what is on the ballot and what am I going to vote for, so that I just know exactly. I don't have to guess about anything when I get in there. I can say these are my convictions. This is what I feel like I need to vote for.
Yeah. I did do some time the night before I was going to go vote to make sure I knew everybody's platform and what I was going to do. I did get hung up on the judges because I'm still not sure how you look at judges to see who to vote for. So I'm going to have to I have a friend who's a judge. I'm going to have to tag her and say, hey, talk to me about this so I do this more intelligently.
Yeah.
But Callie also learned yesterday that you cannot take your phone in.
Yeah. So I went to go vote yesterday, and Cole, like you, I normally end up sitting in the parking lot for a little while, going through my sample ballot and figuring out everything and doing my last minute little pieces of research that I need to. Well, last year I just had my phone with all my notes. I took my sample ballot and I marked it up and went through the real ballot, and it was fine. They were my notes on my ballot, and I submitted it. Well, when I went in yesterday to go vote, because I'm an early voter, I went the same way. I had it all on my phone because this is 2024. Who has paper anymore? And they were like, no, you can't have your phones. You really aren't supposed to have them at all. We'll let you have them as long as they're silented. If we see them, you have to leave. And I was like, what? So then I left. I didn't vote. I left so I could come home and write everything down on a piece of paper so I can go back into the voting booth and vote accurately. I was
Which
kind
is
of
just
annoyed.
so surprising to me. As I mean, there's this huge generation that does everything on their phones. So you've
Yeah,
now handicapped them.
right. And I was
Is
thinking
that
about
deliberate?
I thought the same thing. I was thinking about this the other day in terms of like Gen Z. Like all the Gen Zers I know, most of them don't even own a printer. How are they? How are they going to get this information? I mean, do we need to get them a scroll and what is it? A rock and chisel,
Well,
a quill and a scroll?
Chisel.
They wouldn't know how to write cursive. Can you imagine like little kids chicken scratch on a beautiful scroll?
I just need to point this out. I'm sorry, this is a bit of a tangent, but I marked a little win earlier this week when we were talking to Mom, and I heard her say, "Yeah, sometimes I can't read my own writing," because that's been a point of contention between the two of us for the last couple of years. It's
Boo. Your writing is horrendous.
not
It has
the point.
always been horrendous.
Not the point.
Oh, okay. What was the point?
I
The
think
point
you're in trouble.
is that you have always
I-
talked about your penmanship and how easy cursive is to read and write, and how shocked you are that my generation can't do it. And then you made the point of, yeah, sometimes I can't read my own writing.
Which wasn't in cursive, by the way. It was printed.
Eh.
Regardless,
Oh, okay. Okay, back off of that tangent. Let's go back. Keep going, Cal.
So, my next question, now that we know who's voting and when and all of these things and how, my next question is, we've talked about this in previous episodes, like all of us, the three of us specifically, being not super fond of the two-party system and everything. So my question becomes, I have two. It's a two-parter, I guess. My first question is, do individual votes really matter? If I vote one way or the other, does Callie's voice matter?
I think that's kind of a nuanced question, because I think the answer is both yes and no. In the grand scheme of things, yeah, you're just a tiny drop in the bucket, but you don't get a bucket of water without a bunch of little drops.
That's well stated.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah. I think that's really accurate. I did watch a YouTube this week with Dave Ramsey talking about how people had to go vote. It was not only our right, but it was our responsibility to go vote. And his message was truly directed at people who were choosing not to go vote, and that he felt like they were very wrong in not voting, because again, and he based it on, it's not only our right, but it's our responsibility to vote. And so I did have to kind of agree with him on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we can agree that the bucket of water isn't filled by a mass of water, it is individual single drops, then how do you think that translates or is interpreted by the Electoral College?
Good question.
Yeah, that is a can of worms.
Oh, sure.
I think it varies a little bit depending on where you are geographically, because I think it's handled differently from region to region and state to state. I don't know that I'm ready to articulate a stance on that. I think that in general, being that we are part of a representative democracy, a republic, if you will, that some of that is baked into the structure of our system, that everywhere is going to do it a little bit different. And so, like, some states will say, okay, if our percentage is 60-40, then you get 6 out of 10 of our electoral votes for one candidate and 4 for the other. And I think that is probably fair. But there are also other states who say, okay, if you win 51-49, you get all of our electoral votes. And I think that is reasonable as well.
Just
But not
inconsistent.
representative.
Yeah.
But it is, because if you get 51% of this one particular area, all of that area's electoral votes go to the candidate who got the majority of the vote. And so it's different, but I would still say I still think that's fair and would still be representative. I don't know that it always plays out that way, and so that's a really complex topic.
So I asked it and immediately was like, shoot, I don't feel like I'm quite educated enough to say this well. And then you said it out loud, that kind of the same thing. And I was like, okay, so we can come back to that at a later date when we've done some more research and digging. But here's my next question, since we're going to kind of transition. You just talked about the two different ways, like, hey, we can split it via percentage and share those votes that way, or we can give all of them to the majority. If somebody died and made you king, do you have a preference? What would your preference be for both of you?
I don't know that I can say mine out loud on a podcast.
I am not sure I've ever been more curious in my life.
Give us some clues.
I think if it were me, I would probably move away from an electoral college in general and move more to a popular vote.
And why? I mean, the last, two presidential elections, no, I'm not right on that. But over the course of the last 8 to 12 years, it's not always the popular vote that actually has won the electoral college. So
yeah, and I think in general that has probably benefited more people from that have similar a similar political viewpoint to mine, is that it's not necessarily always the popular vote. I think there are a lot of things within our election and campaign process that would need to change in order to have a popular vote that would be more fairly representative.
So if you could do it, King Cole, what would your method be? Would it be popular vote? Would it be a combination? Would it be ranked voting?
I like the idea of ranked voting. Again, I don't know that I'm educated enough on the subject to say, oh yeah, this is definitely better than the other. I would like to explore that methodology for sure, but I think that requires a lot of change, not just on the voting process itself, but on how citizens are educated on what and how they're voting. And I think that would make a vast difference. I mean, Callie, did you pull any numbers on how many people vote?
I did. So in this last election in 2020, 81,283,501 people voted.
Which is what percentage?
Less than a third. How many voting adults are there in the United States? Or how many adults are eligible to vote?
I think I looked up yesterday, and I think it's 161 million, I believe.
Okay, so that's roughly a little bit more than half the population. We're, 330 million overall. So 161 million and 81 million voted. That's a little over half.
51.3%.
Which actually for a U.S. election is pretty good.
Yeah, a historic record turnout.
Oh, yeah. So I'm looking at, I have a list from Wikipedia that is all of the different numbers for every election so far. And so that election in 2020 was Joe Biden and Donald Trump, right? And there were 81.25 million people voting. The one in 2016 was just under 63 million. Barack Obama's second term was almost 66 million. His first term was just under 70 million. I mean, but then it really kind of tapers off into the 40s, 50s. Oh, God. Back in 1920, only 16 million people voted.
But what was
the
population?
But in the 20s, what was the
Yeah.
overall population?
Yeah, you're right. I said it out loud and then I heard myself. But okay, so here's my next kind of question for you guys. So we've talked about we don't love the two-party system, but we've also talked about, Cole, you had some interest in a candidate like RFK Jr. and things like that. Would you guys consider a third-party vote to be a wasted vote?
I don't think it matters if you consider it a wasted vote or not. I personally could not vote against my own conscience. And so, regardless of whether or not I think someone can win, I think personally I feel duty bound to vote for the person that I have the most conviction could do the job well, regardless of whether that vote is quote unquote wasted or not. That is how I choose to vote. And I typically do not vote down a party ticket. I won't say, oh, I'm just going to vote Libertarian or I'm just going to vote Green Party or Democrat or Republican or whatever it is. I need to go through and look at each of the candidates and look at their platforms and say, which is the person that I think would do the best job, whose policies I would prefer, regardless of whether or not I think they can win. And I think that's a big problem with the two-party system and with our education of voters in general, is that it's like, oh, well, if I don't vote red or blue, then I may as well just not vote, which I think is an abdication of civic duty.
Sure, you could have said that any better for me. Thank you.
Always hope if there is a candidate out there, and I guess Ross Perot is probably the one that comes to mind to me. If people really had voted for him, and they did, I didn't say that right, but if you have that mentality that they cannot win, and that you're wasting your vote, then you're not really voting, like you say, Cole, for who your values match. And yet, I mean, I also know that there is concern about pulling votes away from the candidate most likely to succeed. That you're pulling those votes away, especially if we're looking at a tight race like we are right now. If you have that third party, then and depending, I guess, on where your stance is as to whether you think that's good or bad.
You and I had this conversation back in, I guess, 2016 when it was Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And I remember this conversation so vividly. I'm voting for the lesser of two evils. I'm voting for the lesser of two evils. And while I understand that, I also didn't mean to put you on blast, by the way. Sorry about that. But I think that's kind of the sentiment a lot of us had. So you're not alone in that.
I feel like I've been voting for the lesser of two evils for a long time.
Yeah. Well, so what I was going to say is I feel like we have almost stigmatized third parties, anything outside of Republican or Democrat. And so we have decided that those candidates have no chance. And so what is the point in voting for them? And I think that we've done ourselves and our government, our society, a disservice by doing that. By saying, hey,
agree.
This isn't an option, so I'll just get over it.
Okay, I'm going to throw this in because when I was doing my sample ballot and I was looking at those third-party candidates, it was very often in those third-party candidates that I had an immediate reaction almost to them. Because their platform was so off the norm, or their candidacy even was so off the norm, that I was frustrated for them as well as myself, that it didn't even seem like a legitimate candidate. And so,
right, which is why I kind of go back to that. We've created a stigma around it.
Yeah, I'm so exhausted of this notion of, like you said, having to vote for the lesser of two evils. Why can we just not vote for evil? Like, I'm a big fan of this philosophy that's explored pretty deeply in a book series. It's actually by, I believe he's a Polish writer, Sepkowski. He writes a book series called The Witcher. And so most people have probably at least heard of The Witcher. It's been a very popular video game and now Netflix series. But it in the books, it kind of explores this psyche. The main character has this adamant stance of, I will not choose a decision because it is the lesser of two evils. I will make a different decision that is not evil. And how difficult that can be, to have to take a stand and defend yourself from the backlash of that, in the hopes that maybe eventually society can change so that is not the prevailing ideology, is that, yeah, we're just voting for the lesser of two evils. Because I think it's ridiculous that we as Americans have allowed it to get to this point that, yeah, it's just the lesser of two evils, whichever one is going to damage the country less. Why are we voting for anyone who we think is going to damage the country? Why can't we just have reasonable candidates that we think will help the country on either side?
Totally agree. No, it wasn't you.
I mean, I think it's a whole nother podcast on why we don't have candidates that the majority of us, or even a super majority of us, can support.
Well, I think there are a couple of small reasons that are really all smaller pieces of one big reason, and it's that we don't pay enough attention as a society. We're not involved enough.
That's not all of it. I mean, it's become a contest of money. So the guy that you know next door has no chance of doing this unless he fits a certain criteria and has, a huge PAC. I think PACs are a part of that too, and would love to see those go away. And
I think that's a symptom of that bigger problem, though. I think we have allowed that to become a thing because we're not involved enough. We don't pay enough attention. Those have been allowed to come in and now reign supreme.
I'll go with you on that one. And I think it's going to take, I don't even know what it's going to take to get us back to some semblance of intelligence when it comes to voting.
I think that's the hard part. I was trying to avoid that, but I mean, yeah, I mean, I really, I hope that the solution is not to burn it down, but I think metaphorically speaking, yeah, we have to torch the system that we have right now and reform it pretty drastically. I think you have to get the money out of it.
I agree with you.
I do too. So I'm looking at this list from Wikipedia about the Electoral College and the popular vote and all, and I'm kind of a little bit confused, which is going to make me sound like a real dummy, but there are a couple of different categories on here. So there's one color that says winner did not receive the majority of the popular vote, and then there's another, and that would include in my lifetime, since 1980, there are only 2 times where that has happened, and it was both for Bill Clinton. And then there's another one on here called winner lost the popular vote, and that's Donald Trump in 2016 and George W. Bush in 2000. What's the difference?
Yeah, I'm a little bit. So the 2 categories are did not win the popular vote and lost the popular vote.
Lost the popular vote and did not receive a majority of the popular vote.
Yeah.
Aren't those...
That's what I'm saying. Aren't they the same? I sent you the link in the chat. Just
not necessarily the same, because you could be so close that there's not a majority. Add your third party in there, and so you may not have a majority.
Even so, if you're breaking it into thirds, 40% would be a majority. If you've got 30, 30, 40, the person with 40, that's a majority.
Yeah, but if it's lower than that, meaning if it's 10,
So
45, 45.
So what happens in a scenario like that if you've got 10, 45, 45? Does the Electoral College just get to say, we're going to split this in half, or do they just say, nah, we want this other person, we're going to vote them in?
I'm not sure that the Electoral College follows that vote at all, because that Electoral College is done by state, so I don't know that it follows that at all.
I was trying to pull up a couple of other informational pieces to see this popular vote thing, just to see if I can see it in a different format, and that makes more sense. So this is from, oh gosh, how do you say that? Statista? I don't know. So this is a little bit
Statista.
statista. So 2020, the Republican candidate got 46.9% of the popular vote, and the Democratic candidate got 51.3% of the popular vote. So that would be Joe Biden won the popular vote and the Electoral College. Then in 2016, the Republican candidate got 46% of the popular vote. The Democratic candidate got 48.1% of the popular vote. And that would mean that, or that would shake out to be that even though the Republican candidate got less than the Democratic candidate, won the election with the with the Electoral College.
Yeah.
Donald Trump won via the Electoral College, not the popular vote against Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, and I think that's been pretty commonly the case, because didn't the same thing happen with George W. in 2000?
Okay, in 2000, the Republican candidate got 47.9%, and the Democratic candidate got 48.4%, and the Republican candidate won. George Bush won over Al Gore. So yes.
Yeah.
I will also say it's kind of scary to me if you look at that chart that I just sent over, the red and blue one that's there. It's kind of scary to me how much closer these races have gotten. There's got to be some kind of meaning. Oh, except in the late 1800s, they were, holy cow. Some of these races are decided by 0.2%, 48.3 to 48.5%, 48.2 to 48.3% in 1880. Golly, it's probably a good thing we didn't have social media then, because I think a whole bunch of people would have been off their rockers. Wow. Okay, so we're not 100% sold on the Electoral College or the popular vote because of how they're done and what this means. Okay, so then that leads me to my next kind of question. What do you guys think about what is going on in Pennsylvania with Elon Musk and all of these voters?
You mean that he's offering $1 million to voters
Every day.
So I'm not up to date on this. I don't follow Elon very closely.
Oh, Cole, this one is something, that's for sure.
You haven't seen him jumping around on the stage?
Oh, yeah.
No, because again, I don't follow Elon very closely, and I think that most of the news that is broadcast is intended to just rile people up, and so I do my best to try and avoid it.
So I don't know a whole ton about it, Cole, but the long and the short of it is, from what I've gathered, and I could be wrong, but the long and the short of it from what I've gathered is that with Pennsylvania being a swing state, Elon Musk is coming in to support Donald Trump. And so he has offered to give $1 million away to voters who what did he say? Who support the Second Amendment and something else.
So this is an article from The Hill. I'll go ahead and post it here. I've read the first sentence so far, and this is: Elon Musk announced he will pay up to $1 million per day to Pennsylvania voters who sign his America PAC petition leading up to Election Day. I don't know what this America PAC petition covers. Let's see.
And the DOJ has warned him that this is not legal. And it hasn't stopped him.
Yeah, and he continued.
Screw the rules. I have money.
Yes. That's exactly what it is.
So it is fascinating, though. It's a plan to get voters to register, not to vote, to register. So you can imagine the number of people who are going to go out there. I mean, this is a lottery. So if I can go register, but do you have to sign his PAC?
You have to sign the petition, yes. That's essentially what enters you. And then they're checking to make sure that you've registered to vote. And I think the ones that have already been awarded had already voted previously, before he even announced this.
Okay.
It has been very, very strange.
So this looks like it's not just Pennsylvania. I'm on this America Pac
Yeah, there are a couple.
petition.theamericapac.org. Looks like Pennsylvania, Georgia, Nevada, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, or North Carolina
Yes.
between October 6th and November 5th. There's not a whole lot to this petition. It just says the first and second amendments guarantee freedom of speech and the right to bear arms. By signing below, I am pledging my support for the first and second amendments.
Right. Because he can't legally say, I am pledging to support this candidate. That would be buying votes. It's a little hairy.
I mean, I guess to the letter of the law, sure. I'm not super familiar with the letter of the law here, but
Oh, this is interesting. On Sunday, the second day of the sweepstakes, the Super PAC reframed its message around the giveaway, describing the money as payment for a job. In social media posts, the group said winners would be, quote, selected to earn $1 million as a spokesperson for American PAC. Interesting. So we already know that I'm not an Elon fan in any capacity. And I think that if someone is doing something that is so questionable, specific to a candidate, that it is definitely an issue. And I do hope the Justice Department steps in on this.
I mean, if this is allowed, what's next?
Yeah.
Where does this snowball into?
I want to be very, very careful with my words here because I know that you're probably not going to like this, but to me, this looks like an example dipping, at least Elon dipping his toes in the water of lobbying the people and not the government, which is an interesting concept to me. I'm not saying that he's going about it the right way, but that's what I'm perceiving this as.
Isn't that
Explain that.
campaigning?
I mean, yeah, to a certain extent, but we had a conversation several weeks ago about how I think that we should get the lobbyists out of government, and
Yes.
and my suggested solution was to now aim that lobbying ability at the people as opposed to the people in power. And to me, this is an example of that. Again, I'm not sure that this is going about it the right way, but this appears to me to be an attempt to do exactly that, is point that power of money, of lobbying at everyday voters, at individual citizens, as opposed to a lobbyist pointing it at a senator or a representative or a judge or whoever it is that they're petitioning for this advantage. This now seems to be like it's being pointed at the people instead, which I see as a step in the right direction. Again, this is not me condoning this behavior. It's just kind of how I'm perceiving it as a lobby towards the people as opposed to the people in power.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. If the goal, and he states, you don't have to be a Republican to qualify for this. You don't even have to go to vote. So what's the point? I
To get people involved.
But it doesn't.
It incentivizes them to get involved.
No,
Yeah.
it doesn't. It just gets them to sign electronically a petition, but they don't have to do anything. It's a lottery.
Well, they have to, but they have to sign the petition, and if you see this and you're like, "Oh yeah, I'm in favor of the First and Second Amendments," and now Elon has given me $1 million or a chance at $1 million, then now I feel a little bit more obligated to be involved in the conversation and potentially to go vote. It's not directly saying, "Yeah, you have to go vote for Trump and I'll give you $1 million." It's just saying, "Hey, we're incentivizing your engagement in this, which is about as close as you can get to buying someone's participation.
Which just sounds like a bad idea to me.
Just don't think it's going to work quite that easily either.
Why does that sound like a bad idea is I guess my question.
For all of the reasons that we talked about a few minutes ago, not liking the two-party system, because it becomes a popularity contest and it becomes a contest of money rather than actual skill, ability, desire, patriotism to do the job and to do the job well.
Right, but this doesn't require you again to vote for, or it doesn't even require you to vote. It just requires you to get involved in this sentiment. I mean, I totally get where you're coming from, and like I said,
is that not all press is good press?
I mean, if it gets people active and engaged in the conversation with the society as a whole, I mean,
but I don't think it does. It has the capability of not doing anything except distracting people.
Maybe that's
for
the
this
goal.
Lottery.
But what is it distracting them from?
If I'm focused on winning $1 million in the Elon Musk lottery, I'm not paying attention to anything else.
But I guess my next question, though, becomes how much attention does this require of you? Like Cole said, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to, nothing. You're just kind of there.
You give your email address and your name and cell phone number and say, yeah, I support the First and Second Amendment.
It's weird.
I guess I'm thinking, surely, and this is stupid on my part, people aren't quite that gullible to think it's going to be that easy. That I would just be suspicious.
Of what?
What am I signing up for? What's behind the scenes that I'm signing up for? What is really behind this? Because this looks too
good to be true.
Yeah, I don't even have to go spend $1 on a lottery ticket to get into this lottery.
I think that's the whole point. I think, again, it's just to drive engagement. I mean, based on what I can see here on this petition's website, all it is saying is, by signing below, I am pledging my support for the First and Second Amendments. There aren't any asterisks. There aren't any...
Is there a terms of condition or terms of agreement is what I meant. Are there any terms of agreement or anything that we're supposed to look at before we sign this thing?
I'm sure.
Not that it shows here for me. It has a small disclaimer at the bottom. Each person may only sign this petition once. Eligible people may only list one eligible person as their referrer. Signing on behalf of another person is not permitted. Before payment is made, America PAC will verify the accuracy of all information of the referrer and referee. Payments of $600 or more will require the referrer to provide a signed IRS W-9 so an IRS 1099 can be issued. To be eligible, both the referrer and the petition signer must be registered voters of Arizona, Michigan, Georgia, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, or Wisconsin. That's the...
Okay, I also think that this is a marketing ploy.
Sure, 100%.
It has nothing to do, Elon Musk is not missing $1 million. He's not missing $20 million to give it out for all of these people, whatever it is. He's not missing any of that. He is doing this to make a splash and get people wet. That's it.
Sure.
No other reason than that. I want you to be
love
wet.
that description, though. He's just making a splash to get people wet.
Am I wrong, though?
No, but I love that.
No, I completely agree with you.
I don't want Elon Musk squirting any kind of liquids on me, just for the record.
Okay, Taylor.
So
I would concur with you, but again, here's the thing. If this was somebody that wasn't Elon Musk, would it be so detested? Would it be so
if it has money involved? Yes. So that's kind of what brought this kind of round of questions, line of thinking up for me. So Taylor Swift made her Kamala endorsement after their debate on Instagram. This is who I am. This is what's important to me. You should go make your own call. You should do your own research and do this for yourself. And here's a link to go register to vote. Vote.org or whatever it was. Do you guys have any concept of how many people clicked on that link?
I'm sure it was in the millions.
It wasn't.
No, but it was in the 30 to 50,000.
Oh, God.
Interesting.
No, it was almost 500,000.
Oh.
I want to say it was like 467,000 at last, like in 24 hours. In 24 hours, something like that. Shoot, now I feel like I've got the numbers wrong. I know that it was well over 400,000, and I know that it was shortly thereafter. It may have been a week, but no, it was
Okay.
only 24 hours because that's how long the link was.
So is the only difference between those two that he offers $1 million for a random winner? Are we doing the same thing?
I think in the long run, yeah, that it's the same thing. Would it be different, Callie? Would it be less attractive to you if she had said up until election day, a random person who registers to vote gets free Taylor Swift concert tickets?
Okay, now you're really throwing a wrench in this because who doesn't want Taylor Swift concert tickets? But yes, I think that would be equally as wrong.
I guess my question is, why is that wrong? Why is putting a monetary value on engagement or participation? Why is it providing some sort of incentive? Is it just because that it should be our civic duty to do the research and vote anyways, and that we should be expected to engage regardless of the incentive?
I mean, is that not kind of the standard definition of corruption?
You have a point. I mean,
and I
but,
just
but
don't
again,
feel that corruption has any place in our society. Is it there? Absolutely. Do I wish that it wasn't? Yes, I do.
I
Okay.
think to me
Here's
it would.
Go ahead.
I think to me it would be a little bit different if it was, I'll pay $1 million to anyone who goes and votes for the guy that I want to get elected. But if it's just to say, hey, there is a monetary incentive to participate, to be engaged in the conversation, I don't know that I would view that as corruption.
Okay, I'm going to have to look this up, but it says federal law bars paying people to register to vote.
Yes, it does.
So this petition just requires that you be a registered voter. It doesn't say that you have to go and register. You just have to be a registered voter to be eligible, and that you sign a petition saying that you support the First and Second Amendments. And so this is really legalese kind of sneaky Elon bullshit. Sure, I'll go there with you. And do I think it's a great look? No. But I also can't definitively say that I think it's wrong.
So I just went and looked up the definition of corruption. According to Oxford Dictionary, the definition is dishonest or fraudulent conduct by those in power, typically involving bribery. So first and foremost, I think it's very, very clear that you could say that this is bribery.
I would tell you that I could argue against you in a court to say that it's not. Because again, it's not requiring you. So in order for it to be bribery, I have to be taking an action that gives you some sort of advantage.
And $1 million doesn't?
Right. But the people that he's giving $1 million to are not doing anything to. He is not gaining anything from giving these people $1 million. He is saying you get $1 million for being involved.
I think that that's a really naive way of looking at it. Whether this goes the way that he wants it to or not, he definitely has intentions for how he wants this to go. He's not doing this out of the goodness of his heart because he wants people to go vote.
I mean, sure, but he is not explicitly requiring them to go and vote for Donald Trump. And so
That's
this would
because
not.
he can't.
Sure, which makes this, legally speaking, not bribery. Because you can vote for Kamala Harris and still support the First and Second Amendments.
Absolutely.
And win $1 million.
I find it interesting that the first picture I find of the $1 million winner in Pennsylvania happens to have a Trump Vance shirt on.
They all do.
Well,
They're all
yes, because as
Donald Trump super fans.
As an American voter, if you support the First and Second Amendment, you're more likely to have a Vance Trump shirt on than a Harris Walsh shirt.
I am so concerned with this headline. Elon Musk is committing a crime, but it doesn't matter because he's rich.
Welcome to
read it
America.
yesterday.
I could say just like his presidential candidate.
I mean, and then you start looking into the people,
All presidential candidates.
the running buddies of these people going, whoa.
Say that again, Cal.
I just start looking at these candidates and who they surround themselves with and who their kind of running buddies are. And I just go, whoa.
Yeah. On both sides.
To an extent, I think that the same could be said of every single one of us.
I just want to read this. This comes from The Nation. And it's this article. He's committing a crime, but it doesn't matter. And it says, the rules you see are different for which rich white Republicans who violate the laws than they are for anyone else. I thought everyone knew that by now.
The rules have always been different for the wealthy.
This doesn't say wealthy. This says rich white Republicans.
Oh, okay, so
That's a
it has
difference.
inherent bias. It has inherent bias. Sure, that's totally fine. Regardless, the rules have always been different for the wealthy. You can drive as fast as you want to if you can pay for all your speeding tickets.
Yeah.
I mean, you can break whatever laws you want to as long as you can pay for either a good attorney or pay the fines and not have to be concerned about it.
I think this is an interesting point. Why just the First and Second Amendment? Why not the Constitution?
Because those two are the most hotly debated and contested right now.
Yeah, that's your polarizing topics between Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah.
Because this is all just a show.
100%. I don't disagree with you at all there.
Okay, getting back on to kind of the bigger discussion on this, because I am done with Elon Musk.
Your lips to God's ears.
So, do you think, but kind of still in this same vein, do you think that celebrity endorsements or influencers or whoever, do you think that they're,
Misdirecting.
Shaping.
do you think that their endorsements of political candidates are warranted, necessary, important, stupid? What do you think of them?
Well, for me personally, I don't really care who is voting for who. That's a decision that each individual needs and has to make. But I also would say that I am probably not the same as many Americans. And I for some people, yeah, whoever George Clooney wants to vote for is who they're going to vote for. Whoever Taylor Swift wants to vote for is who they're going to vote for. And I am not a fan of that mentality, but it certainly exists.
So do you think that those celebrity endorsements are positive, negative, neutral? In general, across the nation, not necessarily just for you, Cole.
That's a really tough question because I think it'd be hard for me to say that it is net positive or net negative. I also think it would be hard for me to say that it would be net neutral. Because it is getting some people involved, much like this petition is. It is driving engagement, which to me, I guess is a good thing. My concern is it being done for the right reasons? But that's sort of irrelevant.
So here's my 2 cents. If I don't care who George Clooney votes for. And I would probably say if your dad hears some actor, supporting somebody, he's going to go in the opposite direction just because.
Even if it was Meg Ryan supporting Kamala Harris?
Now, that's a good question.
Or Meg Ryan supporting Donald Trump?
I mean, Meg Ryan supporting anything might
Sweat my dad.
Yeah, might mess him up. But, or used to. But if I see a police department or the union of sheriff's offices, and I do tend to at least hear that more than I do if it's George Clooney or Meg Ryan.
Meg Ryan was fine.
You are your father's son. I mean, so
I don't get that.
him being his father's son or Meg Ryan's hotness?
Meg Ryan.
Meg Ryan was fine. Did you see Top Gun?
She cute. So
Anyway,
I
Rip Goose.
oh gosh. I just wonder if I feel like, Cole, we've talked about especially Americans being not as educated as we would like. And then you've got, and that's not every single American, right? There are plenty of educated Americans, but in general, our consensus is that we need to do a better job with education in this country. So,
Political education.
specifically, yes, thank you. So since we're not doing that, then you've got the quote unquote smart people who are doing the research and doing the legwork and figuring all of this out. Would you not consider it kind of part of their duty to share that information?
Or is that just a crutch?
Or is it a crutch? Yeah.
Could you say that for me again?
We've got an uneducated public, and you've got some people who are more educated who are then sharing that education and saying, hey, this is why I'm voting for Kamala Harris. This is why I'm voting for Donald Trump. These are the reasons that I have done the research on that make sense to me. This is what I think makes the most sense. And so then as one of those uneducated Americans, you can look up to those people that you consider a role model, whether that is Taylor Swift or the police chiefs union or
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. You, for whatever reason, look up to them and you trust them in some capacity, which we don't have to get into the reality of that.
But this is making an assumption that whoever is spouting that information or making that determination is educated politically on what they're saying.
Well, that's why I went into the whole thing about it doesn't really, I feel like putting your faith into anyone else is probably.
I think I'm getting what you're saying, and I think largely I would agree with you. I think there would be certain individuals that I would be more inclined to give more weight to their opinion. I still think each of us individually is responsible for making sure that we're informed before we cast a vote.
Yes, I would agree with you. I just wonder if to some of those people who are less educated, who don't necessarily see it the same way, that they would consider themselves educated enough, air quotes, educated enough because George Clooney, who they admire and they quote unquote trust, is voting this way or that way. So that's enough for me, kind of thing.
I think that is lazy and irresponsible, personally.
Oh, I agree.
Regardless of who it is you're looking up to, like, it could be. I'm trying to think of someone that I really respect intellectually.
Your mother's
That
raising
didn't
her
work,
hand.
did it?
Well, I do have a lot of respect for you, and so
That
I
was
think that
awesome.
actually illustrates my point really, really well, is that I do have a lot of respect for you intellectually, but there are things that we disagree on, and I probably tend to vote quite differently from you, but I would take your opinion into consideration, but I would never vote for someone just because you're voting for them.
Dang
I
it.
think again that is the outcome of your education.
Sure.
And I don't think some people are that smart. All people. I don't think all people are that smart.
I don't think all people. I think a lot of people are that smart. I think a lot of people choose to not be that engaged.
I think y'all are terrifying me in the way that you're talking about Americans not being smart, that we are being extremely insulting and assuming some things.
Yeah,
And
I
that we
wanted
have to have a caveat that this is political education, which I'm not up there either. I'm not where I need to be politically educated. I'm not.
Me either.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe a better word as opposed to educated or even politically educated would be well informed.
That's a great way to say it, Cole.
Because I think those are different.
You're totally right. That's exactly what my intention was. Yes. Well informed. Yes, thank you. So I guess it just kind of feels like a little bit of a fool's errand to say, hey, I'm not going to go do the research myself. I'm just going to trust so-and-so.
I think that's lazy and a cop-out, and again, an abdication of your civic duty.
I agree, but I think it happens more often than than I
Oh,
care to admit.
I would, I would say a significant portion, if not a majority, of people that are engaged I would say that there is a considerable portion of American voters who view it that way, and I disagree with that person. I disagree with that mentality and that practice personally, but I also know that me sitting on my soapbox isn't going to change that for most people, I don't think. Because it goes back to a conversation that we've had before. Most people have everyday lives, and they're so consumed by those everyday lives that they don't dedicate the time to that. And I can't say that I do either. Like I said, I typically spend about an hour and a half, 2 hours sitting in my car in the parking lot before I go vote to make sure that I'm informed. And a lot of people don't have an hour and a half, 2 hours to go sit in the parking lot at their polling station to make sure that they know what they're voting for.
Well, and the truth of that is, even doing that is exhausting and frustrating and
hard.
hard.
Yeah. And this is a Roganism, but doing hard things is good for you.
We can do hard things, Glennon Doyle.
Thanks, Cal.
Oh, man. Okay.
Interesting conversation.
Are you ready for me to really put a burr in Mom's saddle?
Oh, God.
Yes. Do it.
Tell me how you feel about political text messages.
I'm so annoyed by these. And you can't really, I mean, it says just put stop in if you want it to end, but that's a big fat lie. But worse than that is the story that I read this week about these text messages coming in to our older generation, our geriatric generation, and these people not understanding what they're doing, and they're contributing oftentimes multiple times a day, hundreds and thousands of dollars, that they don't even know that this is what they're doing. It broke my heart to see this article about a son showing his dad a list of 100 bank transactions where his dad had donated, and his dad has Alzheimer's and doesn't even know what he's doing. That's wrong. I did not sign up for you to send me political messages, not from any party, and I should not be receiving them on my text messages. It's just the same thing as spam, and it should be illegal.
I 100% agree, and I have no idea how I have managed to do it, but I have not received a single one from either party this campaign season.
I haven't either.
Why am I getting them? From both parties.
You're on the list.
No, y'all are on the list. We've already had this conversation.
No, we're
Y'all
on the
are-
NSA list. They
I'm
don't
on a
give
different
shit.
list, yeah.
Yeah, they don't care how we vote on that list.
I think my FBI agent has told them, yeah, don't send any text messages. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Well, would you send him a message and ask him to add me to that list?
So, but wait, Mom.
Seriously, y'all have not received any?
I've
Zero.
received one from like Turbo Vote that said, "Hey, don't forget to go register."
I got one from the Biden campaign 4 years ago.
I am
She
speechless.
is shook.
I-
But wait,
I
I thought you said some of the ones that you were reading about were actually scams. Like they're
some
not
of them are.
actually really going to these campaigns, and they're spending. You said you found one that was $160,000.
Yeah. I mean, they're giving away
Swindle.
their retirement. Yes.
Yeah, and it is illegal. The problem is that it's very difficult to track those.
Well, if we didn't have any of them to start out with, then you would know that everything that you got was a scam.
I don't disagree with you, but unfortunately, it's too late for that now.
Here's what I really want to know. I want to know if that political campaign is giving the money back.
What do you mean?
I want to know if that man with Alzheimer's got his money back from that political campaign, or if they kept it.
They kept it.
I would be shocked if they give it back.
I don't know who he donated it to, but they kept it.
I would be suing, and I'm not litigious, but I would be, if that was my dad, I would be going after somebody.
I would at least go to the news, and I would be very, very loud about it. Because even if I can't get it back, everyone is going to know what you did.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be naming names.
The problem is if it's a scam, it's going to be so difficult to track down and figure out who it is, because they can move those assets so quickly and so through so many different avenues that it could potentially be almost impossible to track.
And I agree with that. If this was a legitimate donation or a donation to a legitimate campaign, they have an obligation to give that money back if that individual did
particularly
not.
if they are targeting older voters.
Yes.
I think that's predatory and
Yes.
wrong.
Yes.
So
Welcome to America.
We all agree we hate text messages. Got it. Okay. So before we kind of get out of this, are you guys familiar? This was new to me. So maybe you are, but are you guys familiar with the red massage? Oh my God. The red mirage and the blue shift?
I think I know about it vaguely. It essentially has to do with how the two different parties tend to vote. Republican voters are more likely to vote in person, whereas other voters are more likely to vote either like early or maybe that's it. Republican voters are more likely to vote early and in person, and Democratic voters are more likely to vote remotely. And so as they're coming in, you see them counted, and it looks like there's this massive disparity between a Republican candidate and a Democratic candidate. And then throughout the process, as the other votes begin to be counted, those mail-in ballots are counted later, and then that tends to offset the differential between the two. And that's been going on since the late 90s, early 2000s.
I think it was before that.
And is part of the basis on our conspiracy theories or these things about we have to stop the vote now, because if your Republican candidate wins in the early part of this, and then you can stop the count on any of those other votes, then you don't see the surge. So it comes down for me of making sure that every vote is counted and not considering any of them illegitimate.
I agree.
Yeah. So the red mirage blue shift is everything that you talked about, Cole, and a little bit more than that. So historically speaking, Republicans tend to live in more rural areas than Democrats. So what that ends up meaning is that you might have however many counties in your state, parishes, whatever they're called. Republicans tend to be voting in more rural areas and in smaller groups. Like, I'm not saying the overall number changes, but here's a group of 100 people in this county versus 100,000 people in this county. And so it tends to look like you've got a more Republican stronghold. And then, like Cole said, those Democrats coming in more urban areas, more
population dense areas.
Then you've got other people, you've got more Democrats coming in from more populated areas that take a little bit longer to count because you have to count so many more in one sitting. One district has to count so many more than 10 little districts that are counting the same amount. And so it tends to take more time. And so what I was learning about was how, especially the media, takes that and kind of runs with it. Oh, nope, Republicans are winning. Our candidate's here. We're good. We're good. We're good. And then that's not the case, because all of those additional votes are counted later. And so everything shifts. And so I thought that was so fascinating. I didn't know that, but I was thinking about I need to do some more research, but I would really love to look into this a little bit more for the 2016 election between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, because I'm curious about you guys. I remember going to bed on election night going, oh, Hillary Clinton just won the presidential election. Like, she's
Yeah.
going to be our next president. And I remember the pit in my stomach. I was not a Hillary Clinton person, but I remember waking up to Donald Trump having won the election and just feeling
Me too.
ill.
I remember turning on the news that morning and saying to your dad that morning, Donald Trump won.
Oh my God, it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I would be really curious as to what it looked like, because I almost feel like it's the opposite for that specific election. So I would just be curious as to how that kind of came to be. Okay. I'm ready to get into weird thoughts. Are you guys ready to get weird?
Yeah. Let's get weird.
Okay. So I started thinking about elections and how we vote and all of this. What if elections were conducted like fantasy sports drafts, like football drafts or whatever, where candidates are ranked and voters have to pick from their slate of candidates, just like you would your slate of quarterbacks or your slate of point guards, whatever it may be. I don't know what is up with me and these sports analogies. This is 2 weeks in a row.
It must be that sports game you're playing that you quit playing.
Oh, yeah. Thanks a lot, New York Times. I'm real mad at them about that. Just because I really sucked.
Yeah.
So then voters would have to pick a slate of candidates from different categories, whether you're talking about the economy or healthcare or the environment, people to go and tackle those things, almost subject matter experts in those fields, if you will, to go and do that and build their ideal roster or team to represent our government.
I actually think that's a really interesting idea. So in this, are you kind of like, instead of having the president pick their cabinet, the people are picking their cabinet for them?
Yes.
I think that's a really interesting idea.
I wonder if it would encourage people to be more engaged, which I know is asking a lot. Hey, instead of picking one person, now we're going to ask you to pick a bunch more, and you better know who you're talking about or it's going to suck. But also, does it become overwhelming?
I think for someone like myself, I would say, yeah, I'm gung-ho for something like this. I think for a lot of people that are already kind of overwhelmed with our political system, that it's a pretty big ask.
Yeah.
My personal view is that I would want people to want to be engaged with something like that, but I don't know how realistic that is. Again, because we have stuff going on in our lives that isn't Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. And if you're talking about now, I need to also pick his staff. Well, here there have even more nuance added in, because what if he doesn't work well with this one specific individual? That could be advantageous for the American people. It could also be disastrous, because if those two only butt heads and they can never agree on anything, then nothing ever gets done, just like what we're seeing right now.
Then wouldn't you want to put that into part of your considerations for who you're picking in every spot?
Yeah, absolutely, I would. But again, how am I supposed to be privy to the relationship between those two people that I don't know?
The same way that you're supposed to be privy to the relationship between those two people that you don't know right now. I mean, how many people on this year's ballot do you know?
Sure, but if I'm picking the president's staff as well as the president, and I'm putting people on his staff that he is not going to be able to work with just because I like their policies better, that has potential to be disastrous, because we just get into this gridlock. Because I can't know what their relationship is like. I can't know if they hate or love each other unless they have publicized that in some fashion.
Then I think that this starts putting the onus, and we as the American people would have to start holding people accountable to doing their jobs. Hey, I get that you don't like so-and-so, but it's not about liking so-and-so. It's about accomplishing something that is best for the American people.
Sure, but we don't get to be in their offices every day and make them do things.
Oh, but we do get to not vote them onto our team.
So just to segue this a little bit, in the early American political scene, you had the president, whoever won became the president, and whoever lost became the vice president. And
I think that's a better system. I think it offers more balance.
all right, I'm just going to say this. Can you imagine either of our candidates winning today and the other one being the vice president? And talk about vitriol. Can you imagine?
It would be a fantastic and beautiful nightmare.
I am putting my vote right now on changing the landscape of how we look at politics, especially American politics, to it not being entertainment.
Amen.
I wholeheartedly agree.
These are our lives. These are the lives of too many people, whether we agree or disagree, to look at this as entertainment.
Well, and that is what has me concerned right now. The more I read about people who are supporting Trump is that they don't believe that's just a soundbite. Well, it's not supposed to be a soundbite. It's supposed to be a platform. It's supposed to be what you want for America. So if your entire campaign is just bullshit sound bites, whatever can get the most response out of the media, that's what our political
system has devolved into, though, because we've allowed it to.
Yes.
I understand what you're saying, but I think that the squeaky wheel is getting the grease, and that it's not necessarily the whole process, and we're allowing the squeaky wheel to get the grease.
I hear you there. The part that I struggle is how and who is supposed to decipher what is a soundbite versus what is the platform.
Yeah.
This is the last time you guys are going to ever have to vote. Is that a soundbite, or are you talking about changing the way that we vote? I care about women. Is that a soundbite? Because I'm pretty sure you're pretty proud of overturning Roe v. Wade. Like, how do you know? How does anybody know? How does the candidate know? Oh, I just decided right this moment. That didn't look good in the media, so never mind.
I'm the father of IVF.
Oh my God. Don't even get me started on Arnold Palmer.
Please do not mention Arnold Palmer.
According to Donald Trump. There was hand gestures, listeners, just in case you were missing them.
There were huge, lovely hand gestures. The best hand gestures.
Oh, God. Oh,
okay.
Man.
So
Moving on.
Yeah.
Speaking of hand gestures.
So Callie made me laugh uncontrollably this week because of spelling.
Yes.
So give them your story so I can laugh again.
Okay. So I saw something the other day. Oh God. It was an Instagram reel talking about Donald Trump being a philanderer. And it had captions on the reel, and they spelled philanderer with an O, and I kind of got confused. And I was like, wait, that's how you spell philanderer? And so I looked it up, and I was like, oh no, it was misspelled. But still, I don't know that I have ever thought about spelling philanderer, so I've never put any time into thinking about how it was spelled. And so when I started looking at it, it literally is PHILANDERER. Phil and Like, okay. But then I kind of started with weird thoughts in my own head. And I was like, I said, what did I say, Mom? Oh,
Poor Phil.
I said, I was 36 years old when I realized how philanderer is spelled. Not difficult, but I'd never thought about it before. And now I want to know how awful this Phil dude must have been to have this word created in his image.
Dude.
And it just made me laugh.
When she related it to an individual named Phil, I laughed so hard I cried. Poor Phil.
I mean, I'm sure somebody could go back in and look at the specific Latin, but You can't tell me that somewhere
It's Greek.
Phil wasn't. That's what I was told. Wait, I was told
Philandros, fond of men.
translated from Greek, it means lover man.
Yeah, to love. So, philine, to love, and aner, man, combined into philandros, fond of men.
Phil is gay? I'm just kidding.
Sorry, Phil.
Sorry, Phil. So, that's how I had your mom laughing this week about
Oh, she
Phil
did.
and all of his bad deeds.
Yes,
Oh,
she did.
okay. So here's a really interesting chart talking about the use of the term philander over time, and it peaked in around 1800 and then had another spike, it looks like, in the early 1900s. Now is used much less regularly than it was then.
That makes me feel a lot better about having not ever thought about how it was spelled.
And doesn't really correlate with lover of men. When you say a philanderer today, don't you think of a cheating husband?
Well, not necessarily a cheating husband, it's just a men who readily or frequently enter casual relationships with women.
Men who love. Frequently.
But not men who love men.
No, I was
Anyway.
being ridiculous.
Anyway,
Oh, Mom, have you got a good news story for us? I need something.
I have a good news story. It's pretty good news. But it was interesting to me. Julia Hawkins just recently passed away at the
Am I supposed
age
to know who
of
that is?
no,
Oh, okay.
at the age of 108. But what is fascinating about Julia Hawkins is that she took up running, not just running, but competitive running when she was 100 years old, and her children signed her up for a 100-meter dash.
I was going to say, this is not cross-country running. This is sprints.
This is sprint, and she was winning awards all over the place because it's based on age, and nobody was there to compete with her, so she was winning all these. But I mean, so recently your dad said to me, I don't remember the context, but recently he said to me, I've known you for 40 years. I don't think I've ever seen you run. And here is a 100-year-old woman. We can do anything. Age is relative.
Just a number.
And I'm not going to
Just
start.
a number.
And I'm not going to start running
There's still time.
anywhere.
You're still young.
No, I'm not going to start running. There are many things I might do, but I ain't going to start running.
Fair enough.
Me either.
I might consider it if there was like good meals on the other side of the finish line. Like if you want me to run a 100-meter dash for some chicken fried steak, I'm going to run a 100-meter dash. It might be slow and I might lose to a 100-year-old, but I'd do it.
Okay, here's my other story that made me cry this week. A 12-year-old boy with sickle cell, which I really didn't know much about sickle cell, but my understanding is that it's an extremely painful disease. And the FDA has just approved a gene therapy treatment to alter those genes to get rid of the sickle cell. And his name is Kendrick. Is that right? Kendrick Connor, I believe. Yes, Kendrick Connor is 12 years old, and he just completed, after several weeks stay in the hospital and bone marrow transplant and everything, and some pretty egregious side effects, his therapy treatment for sickle cell, and was able to leave the hospital. And in hospital way, everybody in the hospital lined up and celebrated him leaving the hospital, being able to leave the hospital. And he is looking forward to being able to do things that normal kids do, like run, without being in excruciating pain that takes him to the hospital. And so, Kendrick Connor, we're
We're rooting for you, buddy.
rooting for you.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
And
that's
now I have
amazing.
mascara everywhere. Thanks for that. That's awesome.
I mean,
Good for
it was
him.
a good story. Yeah,
And what does
good
that
story.
say and look like for the future of other people who are battling with sickle cell? Like, that's amazing.
It's a very, very expensive and time consuming process at this point. So, I mean, my hope and prayer is for it to, come down like cancer did, where cancer used to be so very expensive to fight, but I think it's going to take a number of years. And it's such a artist process that they don't feel like they can do more than 10 to 20 people a year.
Wow.
So it's a big deal and a lot of place to still go, but hey,
It's a
one
start.
time. One time.
It's a hell of a start.
Yeah.
What is that? What is that old adage? Every journey starts with a single step.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that was my good story for the week.
Way to go, Kendrick. We're pumped for you.
Yeah.
Well, y'all got anything else? Or are you just going to leave me to sit here and cry in peace?
I'll cry with you.
Thanks, Mom.
So I love you guys. I'm very
I love you
grateful
too.
for you being healthy.
Yeah.
We need to remember to be thankful for that. Love y'all.
Love you too.
Love you guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.